February 19th, 1945. Iwo Jima, 8:30 a.m. The heaviest pre-invasion bombardment so far in World War II is coming to an end. The battle for Iwo Jima is about to be turned over to the grunts.
It was sheer determination and guts. The only perfect battle on a perfect battlefield in the history of the Marine Corps, our country, and possibly the world. Nothing like an innocent woman or a child or any type of civilian. Strictly fighting man against a fighting man. You'll never have another one like that. Never.
Fate has put these U.S. Marines and this tiny 8-square-mile volcanic speck of an island square into the crosshairs of history. Having seized the Marianas Islands in the summer of 1944, the relentless American juggernaut is now within 1,200 miles of Tokyo, striking distance for the long-range B-29 bomber. Located exactly halfway between the Marianas and Tokyo, Iwo, with its 2 completed airfields and a 3rd under construction, would make the perfect emergency landing base for American bombers.
And also, Iwo Jima could be a forward operating base for, and this is an important point, fighters. Fighters that can fly an escort to the strategic bombing aircraft that were bringing a terrible bombing campaign to the Japanese home islands on a daily basis.
Iwo must be taken. The invasion plan calls for 2 Marine divisions to land on the southeast coast, just to the right of Mount Suribachi, the 550-foot volcano that holds the island's highest ground. The 28th Regiment of the 5th Marines will wheel left to sever Suribachi from the rest of the island. The other Marines will push north to close with the enemy and capture the airfields. Rather than meet the invasion force head-on, the Japanese plan is to wait for the beachhead to become clogged with men and machines. Each will then be drawn into a war of attrition through a series of fortified sectors arrayed across the length of the island. 9:02 a.m. The first Marine boots sink into the black sands of Iwo Jima.
It was ankle deep, you know, and you couldn't run. You had to just plunge along, you crawl up or something like that.
And that was the most porous sand I've ever mired up in. You'd go up a step and you'd fall back 2.
At first, resistance is light, with only scattered bursts of small arms. Then, Mount Suribachi comes alive with fire.
By the time we landed, it was several hours after HR. That's when the stuff hit the fan.
As you saw the sand kicking up, explosions here and there, and there's a lot of fire all over the place. It was somewhat like the movies initially until you start seeing the red blood flowing. I realized then that this is what war was really all about.
Death is dealt from all sides. Big guns and small fire from Suribachi on the left and the high cliffs on the right. Long-range artillery zeroes in from the far north end of the island.
This is just the introduction. This is the opening act of one of the toughest battles of World War II.
Defense of the island has fallen to General Tadamichi Kurabayashi. He has forbidden the suicide bonsai attacks that have characterized previous island fighting in the Pacific. He asks his men instead to hunker down. He distributes a vow among them that no man must die until he has killed 10 Americans.
Iwo represented the front door to the Japanese Empire, and the 22,000 or so Japanese on the island knew it was their job to barricade that front door and keep the Marines out until the Japanese homeland could prepare adequate defenses to repel the invasion.
The hellish terrain of Iwo Jima favors the defenders. Moving up from the quicksand of the beaches, the ground spreads out into a plateau devoid of cover, where the island's volcanic rock surface makes the digging of foxholes impossible. Further north, fortified ridges overlook a wasteland of interconnecting ravines and crevices. The island has little vegetation and no fresh water. Most of the Japanese are hidden from sight in 16 miles of underground tunnels and catacombs. Built over a span of 2 years, this marvel of engineering includes 1,500 subterranean rooms and a hospital with a capacity to treat 400 men. The tunnels link countless bunkers, pillboxes, and cave entrances.
Iwo Jima is the most heavily defended and fortified island in the world at this time.
They could have bombed that place 100 years and it would have never been enough for the Marine soldiers and sailors who had to assault the beach.
12 p.m. 2 Marines head up from the beach. 23-year-old platoon leader Lieutenant John Keith Wells, with 21-year-old PFC Don Rule at his side. A troublemaker during training, Rule has surprised Wells by asking to be his runner during the battle. Together, the two men move in close to the rear door of a concrete blockhouse that's under attack by another platoon.
Even though we're standing right there, I'm not even sure they could quite see us because their concentration was on this other platoon advancing on them.
On the roof, a Japanese machine gun nest swivels to meet the assault.
They go up and they just mow them down. They kept trying to knock that thing out. And about the time they'd think they had it knocked out, well, they'd open up again.
Finally, a Marine manages to drop an incendiary grenade through a hole in the roof.
And all of a sudden, that concrete door blew on, and the smoke come out, and you couldn't see the top of them, but you could see those little legs.
Wells unleashes an entire clip from his Tommy gun, and Rule lunges forward to finish off a struggling survivor.
Just laid them out for inspection, you know. Not a one got away.
Further to the east, 24-year-old Corporal Tony Stein of A Company 28th Marines moves in ahead of his pinned-down platoon.
Oh, he was a tough little guy. He had a big panther tattooed on his arm. Something that none of us ever did in those days, big tattoos like that.
He's advancing on a series of enemy bunkers manned by the Japanese 312th Independent Infantry.
Because all of these bunkers in this complex were so well concealed that you couldn't see them until you were within just a few hundred yards of them.
The Japanese feel secure peering out from their firing slits. But they're about to be challenged by Iwo Jima's one-man wrecking crew. A former paratrooper and veteran of the Solomon Islands campaign, Corporal Stein carries an unusual weapon, the Browning Model 1919 A2, aka the Stinger. It's a machine gun designed to spew lead from a Navy bomber, not from the arm of a charging Marine. But in previous fighting in the Pacific, the Marines had found their usual machine guns unequal to the task. They were too cumbersome, requiring a 2- or 3-man crew to operate. And at up to 600 rounds per minute, the rate of fire was fast, but not overwhelming.
It just so happened during the Solomon Islands campaign that there were plenty of Marine dive bombers laying around in kind of junk state. And it didn't take long for a few enterprising Marines to come up with the idea of removing an A&M 230 caliber air-cooled machine gun from one of the wrecked airplanes and then attempt to modify it for use on the ground as an infantry weapon.
The Marines added an improvised trigger, the front sight and buttstock from an M1 rifle, the bipod and rear sight from a BAR, and suddenly they had a handheld light machine gun that could be operated by one man and could tear off over 1,300 rounds per minute. The Stinger was now the deadliest squad automatic weapon in the Marines' arsenal. Stein advances ahead of his platoon until he's within 50 yards of the first bunker. Realizing that the rest of his platoon can't see the target, he decides to flush them out.
Stein stood up, firing his Stinger from the hip at the bunker. The bunker then sank this insane Marine, exposing himself in front of their fire, opened fire, revealing its positions.
Stein drops to the ground and zeroes in on the firing slit. The Stinger turns the inside of the bunker into a hornet's nest.
Each time Stein would give a burst at that bunker, 20 rounds would come through that loophole. The Japanese had to be completely surprised. The Japanese had no expectation that American Marine infantrymen would come ashore at Iwo Jima equipped with an individually portable machine gun that fired 1,300 rounds per minute.
Stein eviscerates the Japanese defenders. But there's a price to pay for the Stinger's deadly rate of fire.
They had this voracious appetite. He could maybe get 5 or possibly even 6 bursts out of a 100-round belt.
Stein has extra ammo stacked back at the beach, some 500 yards away. If he wants to get reloaded, he has to make a mad dash through enemy fire. He takes off his helmet to lighten his load and removes his shoes so he can move faster through the sand. Iwo Jima's one-man wrecking crew heads out through the enemy kill zone. Iwo Jima, February 19, 1945. This is one of the most important days of the war in the Pacific since Pearl Harbor. 30,000 U.S. Marines have assaulted the black sand beaches of this volcanic island. 40,000 more leathernecks wait offshore to join the fight. The Americans have the numbers, but the 21,000 Japanese on the island are well entrenched in a series of underground tunnels, and they're prepared to fight to the death to defend the island and its 3 critical airfields. It's up to the 28th Marines to cut off Mount Suribachi from the rest of the island. In this sector, A Company's Tony Stein engages a series of Japanese bunkers. He's chewed through all of the ammo he's carrying for his modified aircraft machine gun, the Stinger. He needs to get back to the beach to load up.
I did see him running towards the beach barefooted to pick up ammunition. I guess he felt he could run faster or better or something. Because by that time, the beach was really under heavy fire.
On his way to the beach, Stein stops to pick up a wounded Marine and helps him to the rear.
He would do this 8 times, running to the rear, helmetless and shoeless, carrying a wounded Marine on his shoulder to get more ammunition.
Bunker after bunker falls victim to the overwhelming firepower of the Stinger. By the end of the day, Tony Stein has silenced the whole complex and personally accounted for over 20 Japanese dead.
It's the kind of bravery that definitely typified what Marines were doing on Iwo Jima on D-Day, February 19, 1945.
As darkness falls on D-Day, the 28th Marines have successfully isolated Mount Suribachi. It's been a costly day for the Marines. 500 dead, almost 1,800 wounded. It's just a prelude of what's to come. Tomorrow, they will turn south and assault the mountain stronghold. On February 20th, the assault on Suribachi begins with a sustained air and artillery attack. It's followed by a day of hard fighting and slow progress by elements of the 5th Marine Division. To the east, Marines of the 4th Division successfully overrun Airfield Number 1. February 21st, 8 a.m. After a day spent in reserve, Lieutenant John Keith Wells and the 42 men of Easy Company's 3rd Platoon prepare to join the assault on Suribachi.
The Marine strategy for taking Suribachi was 1, to isolate it, 2, to surround it, and 3 to conquer the heights.
Between Lieutenant Wells' Marines and the base of Suribachi stretches 200 yards of barren wasteland, devoid of any cover and crisscrossed by interlocking fields of fire. On the other side of this no man's land are 2 large bunkers with a trench running behind, connecting. Beyond that is the imposing fortress of the mountain itself. Like the hideout of a comic book supervillain, the volcanic rock of Suribachi conceals a 7-story underground lair.
Everything was connected and honeycombed together. So if the Marines bypassed one position, thinking it was knocked out, they move on to the next position. Meanwhile, the first position comes alive again, and now they're attacked from behind.
Roughly 2,000 sons of Japan lurk in Suribachi's dark recesses, well armed and ready to die for the Emperor. Born of fire, the volcano is about to be baptized in blood. Lieutenant Wells is waiting for the arrival of tank support for the impending attack, but there's no sign of the armor.
The tanks gave the Marine infantrymen at least a fighting chance to get in close to the bunkers, because Marines could do exactly what infantry is supposed to do when they operate in combat with armor: use the tank as a shield.
8:15 a.m. Still no tanks.
The tanks wouldn't come, and I got on my phone. I want to know why in the hell they didn't come. We was going to attack. Well, they're back refueling.
Wells can wait no longer. He looks out across the 200-yard killing field, gathers himself, and rises to his feet.
I didn't give orders to anybody. I just got it and took off running right straight for the base. And they chose to follow me.
The Japanese react quickly to the sudden charge. 90mm mortars rain down from Suribachi. PFC Rule and Sergeant Henry Hansen push ahead past the blockhouses to the trench running behind them.
They stuck their head over, and the Japs was in the trench and down there butted heads with them.
The Japanese toss an explosive charge at Hansen's feet.
I don't know what he pitched out, but it was pretty big. And he pitched it out, and when he did, Rule just dived on it.
Don Rule steels himself for the blast.
And it blew old Rule up in the air. Hansen grabbed him, and when he did, he showed his whole chest was wide open. So I told him to drop Rule, leave him. And that was the end of Rule. Yeah.
There's no time to mourn. Wells calls forward 2 men with Browning automatic rifles. They alternate firing and reloading until one of them is killed by a shot from the trench. Wells is anxious to put the 2 concrete bunkers out of action. To do this, he's going to need his flamethrower men.
The flamethrower was a horrible weapon. The Japanese hated it, the Marines had it, and the only defense was to get away from it.
As the flamethrower men work their way forward, Wells is called over to a shell hole to talk with company command. Suddenly, a jarring blast numbs his senses. His body is peppered with shrapnel. A piece of flesh is torn from his left leg. In his condition, Wells would be forgiven for leaving the field, but he takes a shot of morphine and continues to lead his men. He directs one flamethrower man to torch the bunker on the left. The Japanese in the right bunker keep the Marines away with a steady barrage of rifle fire and grenades. Amid the din of war, Wells hears a low rumbling.
And finally, here come the tanks. Oh, Lord. Oh, Lord.
Wells directs a tank to blast the stubborn bunker. It takes 19 rounds of 75mm armor-piercing shells to bust through the concrete. A Marine quickly rushes forward, pushes the nozzle of his flamethrower through the perforation, and fires a burst. 3 Japanese escape out the rear door, where another flamethrower man turns to his lieutenant with a questioning look.
I let him know, yes, it's okay. And of course, he just curled him up like bacon.
With the aid of the late arriving tanks, Easy Company continues to press its advantage toward the base of the mountain. Lieutenant Wells hasn't had any food or water or gone to the bathroom in 2.5 days. With his energy ebbing, he turns over the platoon to one of his sergeants and finally begins the long, painful crawl back to the rear. Wells began the day with 42 men under his command. Almost half are now either dead or wounded. February 23, 1945. Day 4 of the assault on Iwo Jima, 8 a.m. With operations against the base of the volcano completed the previous day, a 40-man patrol from E Company climbs to the summit of Suribachi.
But it is a mystery why the Japanese didn't come out in force and wipe out that entire patrol. It's presumed the Japanese thought that the mountain had fallen and many of them were committing suicide or trying to get through the tunnels to get to the north.
The Marines carry a small American flag that one of them brought ashore from the transport ship USS Missoula. 10:20 a.m. Old Glory rises above Iwo Jima. Marine photographer Lewis Lowry is on hand to commemorate the moment. Seeing the Americans posing for pictures is too much for the last holdouts of the Japanese garrison. They step from a nearby cave and begin their assault. Iwo Jima, February 23, 1945. It's 4 days since the American invasion of this critical Pacific island began. The U.S. Marines have already seized one of Iwo's 3 airfields, but at great cost. Over 1,000 Marines have been killed and more than 2,000 wounded. In the south, the 28th Marines have assaulted Mount Suribachi, a 550-foot volcanic peak that holds the island's highest ground. A 40-man platoon has now reached the summit. To the north, the gains are less dramatic. The curving line of Marines pushing up the island from coast to coast has left them just shy of airfield number 2. 11 a.m. On top of Suribachi, Marine photographer Lewis Lowry snaps the first historic images of the American flag waving over Iwo Jima. But there's more than photographs being shot on the summit this morning.
Japanese soldiers began emerging from caves. They were aware of the flag having been raised, and they began emerging from concealed positions and continuing to fight.
One soldier steps from a cave and cracks off a rifle shot. A BAR man retaliates with a long, deadly burst. A second enemy combatant suddenly emerges from the depths of the volcano. A Japanese officer making a headlong charge with a samurai sword. One of the Marines has a clear shot at him with his .45. He pulls the trigger. The gun misfires. The Marine lunges out of the swordsman's path as the rest of his platoon turns into a firing squad. Sword and soldier clatter to the ground. Now grenades spew out from Suribachi's dark caverns. One arcs toward the photographer, Lowry, and he jumps for his life down the side of the volcano. The Marines maneuver toward the cave entrances to terminate the last gasp of resistance on Suribachi with a deadly hailstorm of grenades, entombing 150 Japanese before they have the chance to mount a full-scale assault. It's only after this final bloodletting on Suribachi that a second, larger flag is sent up the mountain. And a photographer from the Associated Press snaps the picture that will become the iconic image of the battle and an enduring symbol of victory.
More correctly, what it should symbolize is continuing struggle. It's February 23rd. The battle for Iwo Jima will go on for another month. It's the beginning of the battle. It's the beginning of a slogging match that will ultimately result in almost 7,000 dead Marines.
The day after the flag raising, the 3rd Marine Division comes ashore, and together with the 4th Marines, they manage to seize Airfield Number 2. As the 4th wheels east into a heavily fortified region known as the Meat Grinder, the 28th Marines turn north from Suribachi to assault up the western side of the island. March 3rd, 1945, 1 a.m. 19-year-old Private John Armendariz is dug in at his company command post. On a hill 20 feet above him, 2 Marines from Texas are on a perimeter watch. They are 22-year-old Sergeant William Harrow and 19-year-old Private Andrew Carter. 4 a.m. A platoon of 25 to 30 Japanese mass in the dark ravines around them. Their plan is to bust through the perimeter and decimate the company command post.
The Japanese knew that if they could overrun a company command post, it was effectively severing the head of that rifle company. And then suddenly you would have a position of 120, 130, maybe 150 Marines who were leaderless.
For the Japanese, the odds of success are high. All they need to do is kill the 2 Texans. Then they will own the high ground above the company command post. From there, it will be a massacre. At 5 a.m., 2 shadowy figures approach Carter and Harrell's foxhole. Carter fires 4 quick shots from his Garand as Harrell wakes up and gets into his fighting position.
He looked down to his front and saw 2 Japanese coming out of a ravine and immediately engaged them with his carbine and killed them.
I heard a lot of commotion and firing and people yelling and screaming. The Japanese were attacking in force.
More Japanese swarm the perimeter. Carter fires his rifle again. It jams, and he evacuates down the hill.
Carter came down. He wanted another rifle, so he says, "Can I take yours, John?" Says, "Yeah, go ahead and take it."
Carter scrambles back to the top of the hill in time to see a grenade explode, shredding Harrell's arm and breaking his leg. Carter jumps back into the hole as 2 more Japanese soldiers lunge toward them. Carter gets off 2 rounds, dropping one of the attackers. But then his new rifle jams. Snatching up a captured Japanese rifle, he jabs at his attacker with the bayonet, impaling him on the spike. Now a Japanese officer charges in, slashing with a sword. Carter feels the sting of steel against flesh. Harrell draws his pistol with his one good hand and squeezes the trigger. Bleeding and exhausted, Harrell slumps down into the foxhole to die. He orders Carter to evacuate and save himself. Not content to see him die slowly, another infiltrator activates a grenade and drops it at Sergeant Harrell's feet. March 3rd, 1945. Day 12 of the assault on Iwo Jima. the United States Marines now control 2/3 of this vital Pacific outpost, one of the final stepping stones on the campaign to assault the Japanese home islands. The construction crews of the U.S. Navy Seabees are already preparing 2 captured Japanese airfields to receive American fighters and bombers. 5 a.m. On a ridge overlooking his company command post west of Airfield No. 2, Sergeant William Harrow fights to blunt an enemy assault. He loses one hand to a Japanese grenade, and then a second grenade is tossed into his foxhole. Harrow raises his good arm and wounds the enemy grenadier with a shot from his .45. He shoves the grenade out of the hole, finishing off his attacker, but severing his remaining hand in the blast. 20 feet down the hill, Private John Armendariz hears Harrow's screams. He grabs a carbine and rushes to help.
I went up through the hole, and he was really bloody and pain, you can tell. And he was laying like this, with 2 stumps, this stump and this stump here. I said, okay, I'll get you out, I'll get you out. So I started to pull him out, fearful that there was other Japanese right the other side of the hole. I got him about halfway out, and then I saw a helmet coming up at the edge of his hole there. So I pointed the carbine at it. When I saw the eyes, I fired it.
The attack on the company command post has proven to be a massacre for the Japanese. Their bodies litter the ridge. Bloodied and battered, the 2 Texans have stood their ground and held the perimeter. Harrow is still alive, but barely.
In the morning, they evacuated him, and around position, they found 12 bodies, Japanese dead soldiers, 5 of which were directly attributed to his actions.
Harrow loses both his hands, but against all odds, he will survive his injuries and return home to Texas. Over the next 2 weeks, the Marines fight to secure the final airfield and corral General Kurabayashi and the remaining Japanese into a 700-yard-long ravine known as Bloody Gorge. March 25, 1945, the Marines now occupy the entire island and can find no more Japanese forces to attack. It seems the battle has been won. But on Iwo Jima, it's the enemy you can't see that's the most deadly. There are still hundreds of enemy fighters hidden in the catacombs. While the Japanese remnants plot their endgame underground, above ground, a calm has settled over the island. After 35 days of terror, the men of the 5th Pioneer Battalion, a support unit for the 5th Marine Division, feel they can finally relax.
25th March 1945, the battle was over. No more. We didn't even hear a rifle shot for 24 hours.
We were told that the island had been secured and that we would be debarking the island, that half of our unit would go on the 25th, which they did, and the other half would go on the 26th, and I was in the latter group.
Fighters and bombers from the Army Air Corps have begun landing on the island to make use of the captured airfields. The pilots and support crews of the 7th Fighter Command have set up a tent city near the western beaches adjacent to Airfield No. 2. The tents are just north of a line where the 5th Pioneer Battalion is still dug in. 12 p.m. An order circulates for the Marines to turn in all ammo in preparation for their departure. The order draws mixed reviews among the men.
The island was secured, and we were leaving the island the next day. I frankly didn't feel any qualms about it.
We all kept a clip. A clip is about 8 rounds. And the hell with them, we're not going to give it to them.
5 a.m. As the Americans sleep, the more than 250 remnants of General Kurabayashi's forces prepare to give them one final nightmare.
Now, Kobayashi's goal was to protect the homeland. Now, if he could take out some of the B-29 crews or their pilots, that would be one less plane that's going to drop bombs on Japan. The Japanese all knew they were going to be killed, of course, but they went in heavily armed.
Tents full of sleeping airmen provide soft targets for Japanese steel.
The Japs ran through those tents and just cut them up with sabers before they even knew they're being attacked.
The army of dead enders slices through the Air Force bivouac area like a human samurai sword, cutting down everything in its path.
They were slaughtered.
Men were grabbing pistols, carbines, fighting with fists. It was very close combat.
Sleeping in an abandoned cook's tent, Lieutenant Bob Hansen awakes to the sound of gunfire.
As I was crawling out of the tent, I got hit. It felt like my left foot had been blown off because I couldn't feel it. And I reached down and, no, my foot was still there, so I continued to crawl out of the tent. I looked north and saw two Japanese soldiers about 100 feet away.
Hansen has a BAR back in the tent, but he had followed orders and turned in the ammo.
I could use it for a club, but that would be the only way I could utilize it. They were reloading their weapons. I could hear the click-clack.
As the Japanese finish reloading, Lieutenant Hansen readies his combat knife. Iwo Jima, March 26, 1945, 5 a.m. The battle to secure this island is supposed to be over, but someone forgot to tell the Japanese. An attack by a force of more than 200 dead enders has sliced through an encampment of slumbering Air Force personnel. Elements of the attacking force are now only 100 feet from Marine Lieutenant Bob Hansen. And he's turned in all of his ammo in preparation for his departure from the island. Gripping his combat knife, Hansen is prepared to go down fighting.
I was afraid they were going to come my way, and I knew if they did, why, I was probably a goner, and I was determined to take at least one of them with me if I possibly could.
Hansen keeps low to the ground, and the Japanese infiltrators fail to spot him. They move on, taking the attack south toward the lines of the 5th Pioneer Battalion. In one of the foxholes, 20-year-old assistant machine gunner Sammy Bernstein from Connecticut is dug in with his gunner, Arthur Erdman.
Arthur Erdman said he's going to get out of the hole and go see what was wrong. I bet he didn't go maybe 10 or 15 feet. He was cut down by a Jap with a saber. That Jap threw a hand grenade at me. I fired twice. That's the only two I can get off.
Bernstein draws his combat knife and finishes off his attacker.
I just closed my eyes and that was it, because I figured the hand grenade was going to take us.
By now, it's clear to the Marines that they are under a full-scale attack. Lieutenant Harry Martin, a platoon leader in C Company, organizes a firing line. Then, 4 Japanese start hurling grenades from a captured machine gun pit. The Japanese have messed with the wrong Marine.
He was angry at these Japanese for killing some of his men. So Harry attacked those with his .45 automatic pistol.
Martin wipes them out. Realizing that his lines can't withstand another sustained attack, Martin organizes a charge to meet the Japanese head-on.
One of the Japanese threw a grenade. It exploded near Harry and killed him.
Martin's death is not in vain.
This counterattack that Lieutenant Martin led pushed the Japanese out of the Pioneers' perimeter and back to the original perimeter of the airfield.
As the Marines sweep north, a line of Air Corps personnel pushes in from the west. Trapped in the pincer, the remaining Japanese are slaughtered. As day breaks, flamethrower tanks come forward and incinerate any survivors. Private Bernstein is collapsed in his foxhole, dazed by the unexpected violence of the morning. The Japanese grenade is still lying beside him.
It never went off. It was a dud. Somebody yelled, "Sam, get the hell out of that foxhole. It's all over. It's all over. Get up."
For the U.S. Marines, it is mercifully all over. 55 Americans are killed in this last-ditch Japanese attack and 119 wounded. 262 Japanese lie dead. Although never proven, some evidence suggests General Kurabayashi himself led the attack before committing ritual suicide. His body is never found. 8 a.m., the capture of Iwo Jima by American forces is declared complete. Arthur Erdman is among the tragic number who died on what would have been their last day on Iwo Jima.
We boarded ship, and we didn't take Arthur with us. We had to leave him behind to be buried on the island. I walked off that island and left the boy there.
"6,821 Americans gave their lives for the 8 square miles of Iwo Jima, a small piece of territory with a large place in history."
The loss of Iwo Jima basically meant the end of the Japanese Empire. And now the Americans had a base to launch B-29 operations, basically unhindered all across Japan. The loss of Iwo meant the end of World War II for the Japanese.
Among the men of Iwo Jima, Admiral Chester W. Nimitz said, "Uncommon valor was a common virtue." Of the 82 Marines to receive Medals of Honor in World War II, 27 were for action in this horrific fight to the death.
So they asked me, man, all that fight and everything, how many medals did you get off for Iwo Jima? And I said, I got 5. 5, wow, what were they? I said 2 arms, 2 legs, and 1 head. That was my medals.